Kevin Walters has just been given the sack by the Brisbane Broncos. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I just said that sentence, and no, I'm not putting the Buzz Rothfield on it. That actually happened. It really has come out of nowhere in the sense I don't think anyone expected that Brisbane would pull the trigger this early, but they have. Kevy has put out a statement. The Brisbane Broncos will be looking for a new coach before November 1. That is a whole conversation that we could get into today, and maybe we'll touch on it at the end of the video. But I just wanted to give my overall thoughts here. And like I said a mere 15 seconds ago, I can't believe the Broncos actually pulled the trigger on this. It comes at the end of their end of season review. So my first instinct is that either one of two things have happened. Kevy has come to present the board and answer the big tough questions, mainly how bad they were this year. And I think a lot of the criticism around Kevy, at least from me, is that 2 years ago they had the same thing. They had the disaster end of season where they were in the top four. They completely fell out. It was the worst end to a season in the NRL era, at least until the next year when South Sydney did it. But Kevy just couldn't rescue the season as it completely fell off a cliff. And unfortunately, that's what happened this year. And I guess the board would want Kevy to learn from that. As a Brisbane Broncos fan, you would be desperately hoping that Kevy would have learnt from 2 years ago. And unfortunately, it just doesn't seem like he did it. So I guess that may be one reason why the board decided to sack him. The other reason would be, and I guess unfortunately, we have seen a history of Gamble and Cobbo, but maybe the players just didn't believe in Kevy's vision. I don't want to throw that out as a claim without knowing actual fact, and like I've said numerous times in the first 100 seconds of this video, we are likely to learn, especially in the few weeks following the grand final, exactly what happened here. And I guess I am glad that Kevy at least got a meeting at the end of season review. So it's not like the Brisbane Broncos have just sacked him out of nowhere, and I guess what's going to surprise a lot of people is the timing of it. I think most of us can agree that Kevy would have been one of the coaches that was going into 2025 under the most pressure. And like we saw just a year ago with JD and Brad Arthur and Madge Maguire before that when he was at the Tigers, is it just feels like the club and the coach is always on borrowed time. And you don't want your season being over and written off halfway through because you make that decision to sack the coach. And I guess that's what the Brisbane Broncos tried to avoid. Because whether it's the Parramatta Eels and their whole situation with Brad Arthur, or I guess more prominently the South Sydney Rabbitohs and their whole thing with JD this year, the South Sydney season was over before it even started because they decided to hold on to Jason Demetrio. So from that perspective, I think is the reason why they made this decision now. But I still would have given Kevy Walters at least till next year, because a lot of people, especially the ones who literally hate the Brisbane Broncos, and to be fair, I'm not far behind them, but a lot of people are hilariously laughing at this whole situation. And those same people would be saying that Kevy Walters deserved to be sacked. But I'm not as convinced. I don't think Kevy was the main issue here. I think he may have been part of the issue, and that's why I would have given him till next year, because for all the talk around Kevy Walters under-delivering with this roster in 2024, overall, I think he has been a masterstroke signing that the Brisbane Broncos made. And going forward, whether or not, obviously now we know it will be without Kevy Walters, but going forward, Kevy should get a huge rap for turning this team around and building this current roster, because he took over when they were at their lowest club point. They were coming off a wooden spoon. The Brisbane Broncos, the most powerful club, not just in the NRL, but this is a team that, at least when Kevy took over, for the majority of its history, were the biggest solo team in a major city in the biggest heartland of the sport. To put it in AFL terms, it'd be like if there was one team running the show in Melbourne. Imagine how powerful that would be. The Brisbane Broncos are exactly that. They're as big as the Queensland Maroons in Queensland. That has changed over time, especially now with the Dolphins and the Cowboys' success over the last decade or so. But for the majority of the Broncos' history, that has been the case, and that team came last. That team got the wooden spoon and was the laughing stock of the NRL for a solid year when they got bounced out by the Eels 58-0, and then obviously Seabold. Fans went and chucked wooden spoons on the Brisbane Broncos training field, which will be an hilarious video that we throw in Broncos fans' faces for the rest of the time, because it should never have ever happened. So I think Walters deserves a massive rap for coming in. Who did they have when he took over in 2021 on the back of Queensland getting pummeled by New South Wales in what was such a dark history for the state when it comes to rugby league? All Walters had really was Payne Haas. David Fifita had just left, and Queensland Queensland in 2021 didn't pick a single Brisbane Broncos player. For the first time in history, not a single Brisbane Broncos player was in the Queensland Maroons team. Yes, it wasn't a great season, but we fast forward to 2022 and Paddy Carrigan, the arrival of him, Tommy Flegler improved out of sight, Herbie Farnworth and Tony Staggs became one of the best centre pairings. There was so much improvement in 2022, and if it wasn't for that horrible fall off, Walters would have taken a team from the wooden spoon to a top 8 appearance in just 2 years. And looking back, the Tigers would kill for that. The Parramatta Eels have just gone back-to-back years after making a grand final and not made the top 8. I know, they fell off. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that didn't happen, because at the end of the day, you were judged on results. And the simple fact is, Kev, you went back-to-back years without making the top 8. But last year, they went toe-to-toe all season and nearly beat the best team we have ever seen for most of us. Unless you're alive in the 60s and you somehow managed to open YouTube, then congratulations, you are better than my granddad. But for most of us who have actually watched rugby league around the last 20 years or so, we know that the Penrith Panthers is the pinnacle, and this team beat them for 65 minutes. The Brisbane Broncos held the biggest lead in grand final history that was ever to be run down, simply because they were stopped by the single greatest performance I have seen by a rugby league player in the history of the sport. That's the team that nearly won a grand final. And again, I know, Nelly, you were judged on results. The simple fact is, Kevy didn't get it done. But I think that matters when you make such a big decision like this to sack a coach who hasn't just done what I've been saying for the last 5 minutes or so, but this is a club legend, and most importantly, all of the crap we had to hear in the media and from the Brisbane Broncos old boys all those years ago, they're about to come back in full force, and they are about to rip the Brisbane Broncos apart, and that is all we're going to hear all off season. And good luck to whoever they bring in, because they're going to cop it from the Brisbane Broncos old boys. They're going to cop it by the media, and considering the roster that's going to be handed to this new coach, not the one he inherited, because Kevin Walters, he inherited a roster that was nowhere near this. Even a guy like Reece Walsh, who shot up and was incredible at the Warriors, Kevy in 1 year, now two, turned him into a top 5 player in the competition. There are so many gun fullbacks. You could make an argument that Scott Drinkwater, Latrell Mitchell, Kalen Ponga, Tommy Turbo, there are so many fullbacks going around. If you had one of those names that I mentioned not in the top 5 fullbacks, I would completely understand, and they're probably all top 50 players in the NRL. That is how congested that position is, and at least 1 year ago, we were saying Reece Walsh was the best of them all. And he wasn't always that. Kevy turned him into that. And obviously, second year syndrome was a big thing for a lot of rugby league players, and it was a big thing for the Brisbane Broncos this year. I do think Kevy would have learnt a lot from that. And at least to me, he learnt a lot from 2022, because look how good they were last year. I don't think this was a smart decision from the Broncos, if I'm being completely honest. I think they may have overthunk this one. And the reason I think they mainly did it is because they don't want to turn 2025 into a South Sydney 2024. I think what happened to South Sydney and the Parramatta Eels this year with the rosters that they have has scared a lot of teams. And I think we're actually going to see a lot more of this, where clubs, instead of giving a coach another preseason and the start of the next year to back themselves and prove that they should be the man for the job, I think we're going to see a lot more clubs just basically do this, where they just rip the band-aid off early and then go into the next season as a clean slate. Now, Trent Barrett and Ben Teo are going there as assistants next year. I don't think Ben Teo's ready, and as much as I'd love Trent Barrett to prove everyone wrong, I think at this point you can't trust him with the size of the club that is the Brisbane Broncos. I don't think Seabold's going to be running back, especially with all the news he's about to get a contract extension. If I'm the Brisbane Broncos, I'm trying to get Brad Arthur back. Brad Arthur, look what he did at the Parramatta Eels in one of the worst spots I've ever seen a club in my lifetime. Took them to the grand final, and we all know with the Parramatta Eels' ability to win comps, that is as good as it gets for them. So I would be going Brad Arthur as a safe option. But again, the Brisbane Broncos have only ever succeeded with one coach, and that's Wayne, and they've gotten rid of him twice. I can't help but feel that this is all what it comes back to. The Broncos old boys, they've been calling out the Brisbane Broncos board for years, and they've only gone quiet the last couple couple of years because of Kevy, and even through all the turmoil in 2022 and at the end of this year, they still backed him. And guess what? You're not going to have him. They're going to be lucky that all the sports shows are going to go quiet because they would be going off. And I'm going to hear it in the media for the next 6 to 8 months. So to sum up my overall and initial thoughts on the sacking of Kevin Walters, good luck, Brisbane. I don't think this was wise, to be honest. I would have given him the next year. I can understand why they've done it, but I think what the Broncos board has failed to remember is that Walters didn't inherit this squad. He built this team, and I think that whether the Broncos go on and this squad just never ends up reaching their full potential, or maybe they stay together and become a dynasty, I think Kevy deserves a lot of raps for building this team. A lot of people don't like him because a lot of people don't like the Brisbane Broncos, but I think that's the truth. That's my rugby league truth, and this is my YouTube channel, so you're going to hear my rugby league truth. But ladies and gentlemen, smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't yet already. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think it was smart for the Broncos to sack Kevy Walters? And I'll see you in the next one.